All right. Well, week 7 delivered in many respects. And now, Mark, we are left wondering, obviously, amidst the flurry of injuries that occurred across the league this past weekend, we're left wondering with the big question, is the Deshaun Watson era with Cleveland officially over or not? And it's a legitimate question now, despite all of the dead cap, 170 plus $1 million over the next 2 years. Um, that not only has Deshaun not been a productive quarterback on the field for the Cleveland Browns since his arrival, he's also just not been available, Mark. And now he gets hurt yet again with this Achilles injury, out for the season, probably not ready until midway through next season. Total disaster. And I'm seriously wondering, have we seen the last of Deshaun Watson on the field for the Cleveland Browns?
Well, so my instant reaction, if you saw on Twitter, I tweeted at me like he should retire. Like him and his PR should do like and save face and be like, listen, Deshaun, obviously this is a devastating career injury to a guy who, mobility, but make it all like it's health and family and life after football is the most important thing. Spin it however they want. The problem is I realized after tweeting that, it's like, I don't know how that then works with his contract, right? Like, is there a clause where he doesn't get the money if he retires? So if you only get the money if you are actively, in the NFL and like, you know what I mean? Like they could cut you, you're still owed the money, right? But
Sure.
Maybe if he retires, he doesn't get the money. So I'd have to look into the details on that. I think the smartest thing for him PR wise and life wise would be to retire. Now, if that means he's giving up $130 million, then that's not the smartest thing to do. The smartest thing to do is to rehab and be like, hey, just go to the front office and say, I'll be your backup quarterback for the next 2 years. And let's just wind this thing down. Like, I get you're going to have to draft a quarterback. What's crazy about Cleveland right now is Cleveland is a team that I think all of a sudden could become really fun and frisky. Are they going to make the playoffs? No, they've already had too many losses at this point in the season. But we talked about it, a couple weeks ago. Hey, that vaunted Steelers schedule at the end of the year doesn't look so bad because Cleveland stinks now. We thought Cleveland would be good. Well, is Cleveland a frisky, any given Sunday type team with Jameis Winston? It feels like they might. It feels like they might be, right? So, that's going to be, to me, the new development. Listen, Deshaun Watson, you don't root for injury. We've all said it. You listen to every sports show. You've listened by now. It's it's Tuesday night. We've all said the same thing. But if I'm the NFL and I'm the NFL office, secretly I'm just like breathing a huge sigh of relief. This again just puts that story to bed when no one is talking about it as much, and you get to at least ignore it again for another calendar year until he's ready to come back if he chooses to rehab to come back.
Yeah, I think your intuition on the contract is correct. Like, I think if he chose to retire, that he'd be forfeiting a lot of the money. But a forced retirement from the team, so to speak, in some regards, eating the money regardless and just kind of parting ways and releasing him or whatever. I'm not sure what all, is worked into that contract, but obviously not good news for Deshaun, not good news for that contract and everything that it says about the Haslam ownership in that team. But overall, pretty good news for the Cleveland Browns, I would say. They can actually do this pain-free, that now they have to go. This was just like last year with Joe Flacco. And so, I'm sure they wish they had Joe Flacco right now, but they got Jameis Winston. I just saw earlier today they signed Bailey Zappi. Now just have some fun, throw some guys out there. They're certainly they're not going to be any worse than they were because Deshaun Watson was playing like a bottom.
They haven't scored 20 points yet. They haven't scored 20 points. The only team that hasn't scored 20 points. Even the Panthers have scored 20 points. I will say it'll be interesting to see if they do make a move for a Bryce Young, for a Derek Carr. Some of the guys we've talked about that have kind of been on the market already, you feel like shopped around. But Dan, I do think Cleveland financially, like if Deshaun Watson rehabs and you're stuck with that contract, what Cleveland needs is Brock Purdy. Like they need to go find their Brock Purdy in the 5th, 4th, 6th, 7th round. Third round too, you could. You're not paying third rounders much. First and second round, it's still a lot of money to commit to a rookie quarterback, especially a first rounder. They need to go find their Brock Purdy, and maybe their version of Brock Purdy is actually just Jameis Winston, where it's like the other version of Brock Purdy, aka a cheap rookie, way outperforming the contract, is a veteran who you're getting for pennies on the dollar, who also can outperform their contract, i.e. Joe Flacco, i.e. Jameis Winston. We'll see. I think
there's more upside there. Yeah.
If I was any team that had the Browns on my schedule over the next couple of weeks, I'm bummed about this. Like, I'm bummed. I think the Browns are now a better football team and a tougher out. The fact that they're going to start Jameis Winston.
It's a crazy week 7 in the NFL. That was just the tip of the iceberg for some of the other injuries that would follow from week 7. But some big wins, some big losses, as always, to get to. Here we go in our week 7 recap.
Russell Wilson gets top billing on the image. I love it.
Absolutely does. Yeah.
I love
it. Primetime Russ cooking. Absolutely. We'll certainly get to that game. Maybe early on. I don't know. But if not, we'll definitely be covering that as we go down the list of the games today. But as always, we are going to start with our best win, worst loss of the week. Mark, I will toss it to you to get us started here with your best win.
All right. How about them Chiefs?
Nice.
The Chiefs are the best win for me. And Dan, what the note I have written about this game is bully ball. I mean, the Chiefs.
Yeah.
What's so crazy is through the Patriots dynasty early on, right? It was defense. And then Tom Brady became an elite quarterback. And then they didn't win Super Bowls because Tom Brady was thrown to Randy Moss and they never won a Super Bowl in that era of Brady. Then in the back half of the Chiefs dynasty, the 3 Super Bowls at the end of his New England career, it was all-around football team. Tom was elite. Tom was great. But it was back to those defensive principles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really sound special teams as well. The Chiefs so far have been high-flying Super Bowl victories, Tyreek Hill. And now, last year, and into this year, they are physical defense, run the football, and last year won a Super Bowl and well on their way to winning a Super Bowl this year. Dan, the Chiefs ran the ball for 39 times, 184 yards, and 4 touchdowns against the 49ers. Remember, this is a team that over the last 3 years, you would look at the stats and go, oh, whoever played the Niners will bet against them the following week because they're beat to shit and they're going to play like crap. And they would that was always the weird record thing. Like teams that play the Niners are like 0-11 following a game.
No, their defense has been bad this year. Like,
I credit so much of that game. I agree with you; they've been bad this year, but I credit so much of this win of just the game plan. Andy Reid is so special. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has his system, and it's his system no matter what. Andy Reid just goes, "What do I need to do to win this week?" And he does it. Patrick Mahomes has more interceptions than touchdowns. He's not been good statistically, but you know where he's been great? In the fourth quarter. And just like situationally, you watch it. Don't look at the box score with Patrick Mahomes. Situationally watch the game. You're like, the dude is just insane. It's like he looks like Peyton Manning in those late Denver years where it's like, oh yeah, I just know how to win, so I'm just gonna do that. Like I don't really care. I don't need to show you a 70-yard bomb. Hell of a win for the Chiefs on the road. No Juju, no Rashid Rice, obviously no Pacheco. Kareem Hunt they've just inserted and it's system running back, which just goes to show you they should not pay Isaiah Pacheco anything. Just keep plug and playing system running backs. Listen, the Chiefs, incredible win. I'll say this about the Niners, Dan. I mean, obviously, the defense is a concern, but Brock Purdy, the one thing that we kind of liked about Brock Purdy so far in his young career was like, dude, in big moments, he like steps up in those playoff runs. You know what I mean? Like going into overtime, like he wasn't overshadowed in the Super Bowl. Like, dude, this kid's got cojones. Like he can play in prime time. That was at home. Your opponent is down. You have no offensive weapons. Travis Kelce looks like a shell of himself so far this year. I don't know if it's Travis or if it's Patrick or whatever it is, but they're just not putting up numbers. And Brock Purdy was bad. I mean,
It was
ugly
a really bad outing. Yeah,
ugly
absolutely.
interceptions. And Kyle Shanahan lecturing him after the game was a very odd video going around. If you haven't seen it, look it up. It's a weird video. It's definitely a lecture. It is like when you are in the doghouse as a husband and you're like, I just have to put my head down and not say anything for 5 minutes. And that's what's happening right now. That's what happened to Brock Purdy. Huge win for the Chiefs. They're the only undefeated team left. And they once again just showed every team we think can compete with the Chiefs, they've beaten the Niners, the Bills, the Ravens, and they beat them not in blowout fashion, but they beat them in like demoralizing, pick you apart, situational, which is coaching and
just pick their moments. You know, that's what the Chiefs have done. Well, I mean, I guess we might as well stay on that game for a little bit longer because that's my worst loss.
Okay, there you go. All right.
It was the Chiefs defeating the 49ers 28-18 here. Largely because of where the 49ers are at. You're 3-3, you're at home, you have a chance. Obviously, there's all of the narratives around the Super Bowl rematches against the Chiefs, an opportunity to right the ship here. Not only did they get, injury riddled, which we'll talk about in a second here. This was an opportunistic game for the 49ers throughout because the Chiefs weren't playing well. And Mahomes, threw some uncharacteristic picks in this game. The San Fran defense gave the offense life multiple times here. And the 49ers offense couldn't capitalize on those moments. They had a chance to score a touchdown late in the first half, end up having to settle for a field goal there. Not ideal. Later they get it close. It was within 2 points, but even when it was close, it didn't feel like they were being competitive enough because Brock Purdy threw 3 interceptions in this game. Ayuk dropped a key third down catch. There were just so many things out of sync for this team. And meanwhile, the running game is looking fine. Like Jordan Mason's playing well. So even if you get Christian McCaffrey back, how much more is he going to lift this team? I have concerns about the quarterback here with Brock Purdy. And so that's why I think this was probably the worst loss of the week, because now they're 3-4. Their biggest, I guess, takeaway, if they're looking for optimism out of this, is the fact that the NFC West isn't running away.
Yeah.
With a clear front runner, the Seahawks currently on top. So that's their only hope right now, is that they're still in it by a game and a half or so. But really bad loss. When you can get the Chiefs down, you have to pounce and take advantage of that, because
at home,
Chiefs aren't going to play this poorly in other matchups, in Super Bowls, as we've seen here. The 49ers know that. And once again, Andy Reid just getting the best of Kyle Shanahan in this situation. And look, they're going to have questions here about paying Brock Purdy in a year from now. Next year, they're going to have to talk about, are we going to pay Brock Purdy?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, these are questions you got to ask yourself. He's been playing well within the system, but now, Mark, we have Brandon Ayuk with a torn ACL, MCL, going to be out for the year.
And he's paid.
Yeah, he's paid. You're going to have to obviously eat that cash. Deebo Samuel played like 4 snaps.
Pneumonia.
He came in with an illness, and it looks like it got worse.
He's in the hospital.
Actually was hospitalized after that. Yeah, with fluid in his lungs.
He won't play this week.
Yeah, so he's going to be out. You already had McCaffrey out. It's a banged up team.
Tweet Kittle has got a foot sprain. Like, he's day-to-day with a foot sprain too.
Can't buy a break. But this is when Brock Purdy, this is when you need to have a quarterback. This is why quarterbacks get paid to elevate. Can Brock Purdy actually do that? It doesn't seem like that's the case. He's played well with all of these weapons. When one of those 3 main guys is out, Mark, he's 6-8 with this team. Yeah. So that's pretty telling in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to spend time. We'll have plenty of time in the offseason to figure out Brock Purdy and contract. But this is evidence. Yeah. This is file it away. This is evidence for the Niners to say, you're not getting $50 million a year. So, you know what I mean? Like, this is all part of that negotiation. Can I just ask you something? You said you're not going to get an opportunity like this when the Chiefs play poorly. Dan, the Chiefs didn't play poorly. But I think the reason you said that is because Mahomes isn't putting up the numbers. Like the
Well, I'm
Chiefs
just like the Chiefs as a team
dominated.
played well, but Mahomes threw 2 really bad picks. I mean,
Yes.
the 49ers could have been in this, and their defense held the Chiefs to 7 points for a good portion of that first half. You know, like that there were moments throughout this
Yeah.
game where they were ready, and then it was a 2-point game. They could have taken the lead, and again, throws a
But
pick late in
can
the
I
end zone,
ask,
red
like,
zone.
when's the last time a elite, a guy we think of, every single human being who watches football thinks of Mahomes as the one, and then the rest of the people, if they don't think him one, he's 2 or 3 on their list of the best quarterback on the planet right now. When's the last time we've seen a quarterback struggle like this, who's that lauded in the prime of his career? Like, this should be another season where Pat Mahomes is putting up 30 touchdowns, 4,500
Right.
yards. He's not going to get that this year. I don't care what kind of November, December he has. He's not going to get that. The weather's going to turn in Kansas City. Remember, in his MVP year, he put up the giant numbers in September and October when the weather's good. And then you settle in and you win games and you lean on that run game defense. It's weird. I don't know what I'm not panicking if I'm a Chiefs fan, but I will say it's weird.
It is weird. I think it's almost a benefit to show that they can win these games early on. I mean, they're already battle tested at this point of the season. They're 6-0 and they're winning in a variety of ways that don't include blowouts.
So what if they're 14-3 at the end of the year and Mahomes is 20 touchdowns, 20 interceptions, and about 4,000 yards?
That bad,
I'm just saying, like, it's on the track for that. Like, how do we logically, does this impact his legacy, right? Because
I think if they're 14-3, that means, if
he wins
they're 14-3, that means that he still delivered in whenever the team needed it. So I wouldn't be concerned about the playoffs.
And as long as
it would depend on the playoff run. If they go if they lose their opening playoff game
and he's bad,
and then next season they start slow but aren't 6-0, like they're playing like they're playing now, but lose a lot of these games and they're 3-3, then you start to think, oh man, is Mahomes is he starting to slow down? Is it because he's a bigger, thicker guy, right? He takes some shots,
is the magic gone? There's a long time to that, but this is the start of that. He can turn it around. There's plenty of time to turn around, but it's weird. It's just weird. It's very weird.
It's a bizarre situation. And by the way, Mahomes with the longest run of his career in this game, an incredible sideline scamper.
Great run. People who are mad about them, like, oh, the quarterback uses that to his advantage. Yeah, use the sideline to your advantage.
100%.
Know that guys are gonna try to let up because they don't want the penalty. Take advantage of it. Make the defense tackle you. Make them tackle you legally. I'll also say quickly, you brought up Christian McCaffrey. If I was the Niners, I would not panic in the sense of like rushing Christian back, because I think the rush to get Christian back is no Debo, no Ayuk, right? Christian will play the Debo Samuel role when he comes back. You know what I mean? Like if he comes back this weekend, the Jordan Mason is still going to be a huge part of that offense because they need him because they're without other weapons. I wouldn't rush him back. I would say, listen, just because we have a cluster of injuries right now, I'm not going to then rush a guy back just because. Maybe he's medically cleared and this would have been when he came back anyways. But if it's like we're going to up him, getting him in because we're getting desperate, I think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, they play the Cowboys next week. That's a
Sunday
certainly winnable game on Sunday Night Football. And then the Buccaneers after that, Seahawks. Like there isn't too much of a break here for the 49ers, and they do have to start getting some wins pretty soon. But I agree, that usually rushing back always ends in disaster.
What's your win of the week?
My win of the week goes to the Detroit Lions. Back-to-back picks for me for the Lions, getting that win over the Cowboys and now the win over the Vikings. Obviously, I mean, not only did they beat a rival, they beat an undefeated rival. They now, take over the lead in the NFC North. So that was a clear winner for me there. But it was also just like, rolling with the punches throughout this game constantly and going toe-to-toe with Brian Flores' defense, which has been, a problem for quarterbacks so far this year.
Not for Jared.
And Jared Goff looked really good. They unleashed, Jahmyr Gibbs in a big way. And just a lot of things were clicking here. They didn't need Jameson Williams, and that's good because they're not going to have him now for 2 weeks as yet another punishment. A suspension for Jameson Williams comes down, this time for PED use. But yeah, I mean, look, they're winning these games, and they're not even winning it in the way that they did last year, where Sam Laporta was lighting up the scoreboard and they were having these massive plays downfield. They're winning a lot more intermediate with, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's obviously one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. But, Laporta had just a couple catches in this game, and they're still able to, largely dominate a defense that had been really, really good coming into this game. You set up your team for the game winner at the end, and you get that production, out of your kicker at the end of the game, who got the game ball. And, they just, the culture there, man. It's definitely, you can feel it. Like they all are really about the team, everybody. And that's, speaks a lot to what Dan Campbell does there in Detroit. But huge win for them. The Vikings, they barely lost. So to me, I didn't really shift them much in my rankings or anything like that. They are still one of the better teams in the NFL, one of the top units to contend with. But for the Lions to overtake the North in that fashion on the road, big win.
I love it. It was definitely the second choice for me as my win of the week. I'll say this. I think with
Aiden Hutchinson too. First game without Aiden Hutchinson. So
and they blitzed more. They were able to get enough pressure. What I love so much about this Lions team, when you watch them, no one knows their identity, and no one knows their personnel better than the coaching staff of the Detroit Lions. Like, they legitimately put every one of their guys in the best positions in every play. Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell, I don't know who exactly is doing it all. Maybe it's a combination, but it's special. It's special. It looks like Kyle Shanahan's offense mixed with Andy Reid's offense, but with the best offensive line in football, the best run game in football. They are, to me, the best offense in football. The Ravens might have something to say about that, but I would argue that the Lions' offensive line is better. I would argue they are deeper and they have just more guys. Now, Lamar is the best of all those players on both sides of the team.
Yeah. But receiving core, though.
But receiving core, offensive line, and then overall depth of weapons. The Lions just have so many dudes who can beat you. And you're right. It's going to stink for them missing Jameson Williams for 2 games. But they're the one team that can lose a guy and still have so many guys. Like, it's just so many dudes who can play. They're an incredible team. The Lions, to me, went on the road against a division rival. We're down 10-0. That place was rocking.
Right, yeah.
And then scored 21 points so quickly, so easily. And not like 21 points off a fumble, sack, recovery, touchdown, a punt block. No, just like, oh no, our offense is really good. And it took a second, but and then all of a sudden they were up. And then the Vikings and the crowd got back into it. The Lions defense isn't elite, but they showed enough and held on enough. And the Lions offense didn't panic either. They went and added, 10 more points in the second half to do what they had to do to win the game. Great win. I agree with you. If I'm the Vikings, what did I write? What was my note for the Vikings? I know I wrote something down here.
Take it on the chin. I don't know.
Well, I wrote, I still think this is, if you're the Minnesota Vikings, this is a good thing. Like, this is losing at home sucks to a division rival. It sucks. But the pressure of undefeated is horrible. It's a horrible pressure to deal with. You now have a little bit of that revenge factor, right? You're going to see the Lions again. If you want to get to the Super Bowl, the Lions will be in your path. They're in your path just to win your division. So, you know what I mean? Like, take it on the chin. You didn't get blown out. It's not like you lost 42-7. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You were in this game. You had a chance to win this game. You could have won this game. Late in the game, you had a chance to win this game. So I think it's a good. It's not a good loss, but it wasn't anywhere close to my worst loss of the weekend. And I think that's why it was also hard for me to put this as the best win. And just is conversely 2 great teams, 2 best teams in the NFC. I firmly believe right now these are the 2 best teams in the NFC.
Yeah, no, I think I can't think of who else I would put ahead of them right now.
The Packers, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Niners are they've all got
too many holes. Yeah.
But they have questions versus the Lions and the Vikings I feel more confident about.
I will say I felt very nostalgic too to see that David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs have requested to be referred to as Sonic and Knuckles because as a little kid growing up with a Sega Genesis and playing Sonic all the time.
Did you see the new
sweet.
Sonic 2 with Knuckles in it, voiced by Idris Elba?
I haven't actually seen any of the movies.
I'm a Jim Carrey fan too. I have young stepkids, so it's like we've watched them and they're hilarious. Jim Carrey's hilarious. It's classic.
No, I've heard it's great.
But the second one, Knuckles is the bad guy, and he's very funny because Idris Elba plays him, and he's very like Dave Bautista from like Guardians, where he's just like, I say everything I mean. Very funny. And so it's a very appropriate nickname for them.
Nice. I like it. All right, what's your best win?
You ready for this?
Or your loss, yeah.
My loss. I had to get them in here. The worst loss of the weekend is the Chicago Bears. Listen, I'll just explain it. We just talked Vikings and Lions. The worst loss in the Chicago Bears. The Lions and the Vikings. If as a Bears fan, I wanted one of those teams to dominate that game. I wanted one of those teams, preferably the Lions, to win that game 42-10. Sam Darnold seeing ghosts, disaster for him, right? That's what I wanted. Because then in my head, it justifies fool's gold for the Vikings. They're not really that great of an undefeated team. But I know how good the Lions are, and the Vikings were in them with every step of the way on that game. That pains me because I don't think my team could battle with Detroit like that in that type of game right now. I don't. And then on the flip side, here I am hoping the Texans show off and they beat the Packers. Just, CJ Stroud, Joe Mixon, and they couldn't get it done. We'll talk about the game here coming in a second. And not only could they not get it done, Jordan Love looks like the second coming of Brett Favre. I mean, just doesn't care in the world about turnovers. His coach doesn't care. He had ugly interceptions, but yet they just trust him to keep chucking the ball. And it works because they have such great weapons on the outside, young, cocky weapons, and no one who's like George Pickens, who's like, give me the ball or else I'm not going to run around. They're all still in that phase of like young and dumb and hungry. And so it's scary. Scary weekend for me as a Bears fan. Because it's hard to be in a bye and be
well-rested, scary weekend, though.
I lost the bye. We lost the bye.
Yeah.
The loser, the Bears. The rest of the NFC North just looks so good on Sunday that it pains me because I truly think, we saw the Bears against the Texans, wasn't close. I get it's early. It's a different Bears team. It'd probably be a closer game this time around. But I still think the Texans probably win that game. And so that hurts. It really, it hurts. Now, again, they got to play. They got to play the games, the Bears, but they had the worst loss of the weekend, Chicago Bears.
Well, how about the New Orleans Saints, who have dropped was it 3 in a row, 4 in a row?
No, they were 2-0, so they've lost.
They're 5 in a row. It's 5 in a row at this point. Yeah, 5 in a row for them against the Broncos. Here, Broncos destroyed them 33-10.
Yeah,
was the final there in Sean Payton's return to New Orleans. So I'm sure that was extra special for him. Bo Nix still didn't look terribly great, in this one. He ran well, that's for sure.
That was the point.
Williams, like maybe he's should be their feature back now. I think they've kind of figured that out a little bit. I think
they're evolving.
But, yeah,
I've been more critical of the Broncos than anyone, and I will just say this: I thought Sean Payton did a great job helping his quarterback. Sean Payton wanted to win that game and really badly. And he did in easy fashion. And I think a lot of it was because he let Bo Nix and encouraged Bo Nix to just say, screw it, dude. Like, we just need positive plays. And if you running is going to get positive plays, it's great. Bo Nix is not an elite running quarterback. He's kind of like a Justin Herbert running quarterback. I'd say even less than Trevor Lawrence, where it's like, oh, there's a spark there. But in 5 years from now, Bo Nix is not going to be running for 70-plus yards in a game unless he gets a really lucky one long run, right? But use it now while you still got it. Otherwise, the Broncos just ran the ball down the Saints' throats. There was a couple games this weekend, I'll touch on them, where I give these coaching staffs a ton of credit for just being like, this is how we can win this game. Just fucking do it. The Broncos knew it. The Saints are the most injured team in the NFL. They're so beat up. And they literally just looked and said, if we run the ball, we will win this game. And they did that. And Bo Nix did that. And it was an easy win. The Saints are dead. I don't know what they should do. I think
they should start Spencer Rattler the rest.
I think they should trade Derek Carr, and I think they should lose games, and they should try to get a top 5 pick. That would be my suggestion. Fire Dennis Allen, start over, officially go into rebuild. See what you can get for Derek Carr. You could probably get a 4th round pick for Derek Carr. Depending, I think from the Browns, from getting back to the Raiders,
Yeah.
there's a chance.
It's an
The
interesting
Giants,
conundrum that they
just
find
to show
themselves
that they can play with another quarterback. The Giants should be considering that.
Yeah, I think Spencer Rattler should just get the start the rest of the way and figure out if you've got something in him. I wasn't a big fan of Spencer Rattler in college, and then coming out. But I actually thought he played pretty decent. Like he had the 2 fumbles. That was really bad. He had some like really bad
Well, they asked him to do too much. I think he threw the ball 35 times.
Yeah, and the Broncos defense is way better than I thought they would be this year. Like
they're playing well.
They're a pretty solid unit.
And he did not have Olave, his number 1 target, so that
or Shaheed. So yeah, Shaheed. I mean, so they really don't have much that they're working with.
Yeah,
so I think give him the if he's really bad, then you're gonna have a top pick. And if he ends up being better by the end of the year, then maybe you think, okay, like we can try this out next year or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I think if they can get capital for Derek Carr, then this is the time to do it.
Yeah, the Saints are officially in that, like, yep, they're there. Okay.
Yeah.
And the Broncos are now feisty. The Broncos are now officially feisty.
The Jaguars stayed in London after that Bears loss, and they get a win this time around, 32-16 victory over the Patriots. It was a good win. The whole time I was watching this game, I was thinking, well, I mean, it's the Patriots, so like, good for you, Jacksonville. But at the same time, I a win's a win. So I felt like they were moving the ball much better. Tank Bigsby, I think, is like 1 or 2 games away from completely overtaking Travis Etienne as the number 1 lead back in Jacksonville. And then on the flip side, for Drake May, I thought he looked pretty decent in this game overall. He wasn't the reason they lost this game. Is the fact that they couldn't run the ball a lick. That offensive line is poor. They weren't getting production out of the running game, and then game script, played a factor in that. And so I was like, oh, Drake May's actually looking pretty good. But that was like, yeah, but it's also Jacksonville and the Jacksonville defense. So that's really how I felt about both of these offenses in this game. Wasn't going to really take much from either of them. But look, if Jacksonville's going to do this incredible turnaround, it starts with a win over the Patriots in London, where you're supposed to. Now they can come back home, regroup, and see if they can turn their season around.
Again, the Jags ran the ball 39 times. 171 yards, 2 touchdowns. They just said, the coaching staff said, we can win this game if we just run the football, because the Patriots defense is porous. They can't stop the run. So credit to them for doing that. Trevor looked fine. It looked like, it looked like this. I'm not the game plan this week. The game plan is to run the football and win the football game. I love when that happens.
It well. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I agree with you. If Jacksonville needed to win this game, they won the game. So it's okay, you get that, you get credit for doing that. My thought on Drake May after now the second week of watching him is I really love Drake May's upside. Right now, you can already tell he's above, like a head above physically and literally Bo Nix. Like you watch Bo Nix on Thursday, and then you watch Drake May, and you're like, oh, one guy's already maybe at his ceiling and like you hope to refine it. The other guys, it's like, oh, there's something special here. I will say this about Drake May.
I'm impressed with how much he stays in the pocket.
Yes.
Because that wasn't his thing. Was more like he
mobile.
Would rely on his athleticism, right? To like run and do the big throws. But no, he's pretty poised.
He needs to put on like 15, 20 pounds. He looks slight, like he looks a little slight of frame, but he's tall. He bounces, he moves, he reads. And he has only got tight ends and like very inexperienced receivers to deal with. The Patriots have the number 1 overall pick if the season ended today. They are exactly in the position the Chicago Bears were 2 years ago, where it's like, haul, get the haul, get the multiple first round picks. This team needs 7 more B players and like 2 more A players to even start to think about competing. And so they need the haul. It's a perfect scenario for the Patriots fans right now. Your quarterback looks like he's your quarterback and you're losing.
Exactly. Were the Seattle Seahawks a candidate for the win of the week for
Yes,
you? They were
Dan.
for me
So
too.
when we talked about Seattle last week, remember we said it was just like we were disappointed. They were my loss of the week because it felt like,
Yeah.
hey, you had a chance to really steal it. And they played kind of weird and it just was off and it felt like they didn't rise to the occasion. Listen, they came out and shit pumped the Falcons down in Atlanta. And it sucks that the DK left with the knee injury. It looks like it's just a sprain. Like he should be fine. Probably miss a week, but he should be fine. I'll say this: the Seattle now is definitely feels like you can't write them off for that division. Like especially the way the rest of the division is, you can't write them
This is
off.
true.
I don't feel like you can write anyone off in the NFC West right now, and certainly not Seattle. Great win by them. I love Kenneth Walker. He's like one of those guys you watch him and you're like, God, I wish I had a Kenneth Walker.
Really
like,
good.
He's just fun to watch too. And he's a really exciting player. Love DK. I'll say this about Atlanta. They were going to be my loss of the week if I didn't go with the Bears. And truly because again, the whole NFC South lost this weekend. Now they didn't know that going into it, but you are the team that's supposed to be in the most win now mode of the NFC South, right? You were in the offseason, you put yourself in that position to be even in more win now than the Saints and the Bucks. And this is the type of game you can't lose. You have some tough games coming up.
And a chance to separate.
The Seahawks have lost 3 in a row, and they're traveling to your building. And Kirk was not good. It just was bad. It was really ugly. And it was one of those games where we get them probably twice a year with Kirk over the last, especially during the Vikings years, where you're just like, oh, that's ugly. Now, normally they're in prime time, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's just prime time Kirk. But this was just a noon buried game, and you're looking at the score just going, what is going on in Atlanta? And then when you actually watch the highlights and you look at what happened, Kirk did not play well. They did not run the ball, Dan. Look at the Falcons' drives in the second half.
Bijan did, but the team as a whole.
Yeah.
Struggled.
So in the second half, the Falcons, they score a touchdown to get the game to 17-14. They're alive. They get the ball at a half. They score a touchdown. Great. 17-14. We're alive. Then punt, fumble for a touchdown, interception.
Yeah.
It's
brutal.
horrific.
It's a total
great win for Seattle.
Fell apart. A huge win for Seattle. And like you said, I mean, right now they're the front runners in the West, and they have a shot at winning this division. The Bills just basically played bully ball against the Titans. It was a rough outing. Mason Rudolph got the start for Tennessee in this one. 34-10 was the final there. So Buffalo is a situation of them kind of taking care of business when they were supposed to. Amari Cooper scores a touchdown in his debut with Buffalo. I really think that's going to be a huge acquisition come later in the year. I mean, it's already paying dividends, but just to see how Josh Allen's able to operate with a true number one wide receiver on the team, that opens up things for Keon Coleman. That allows for Dalton Kincaid and all these other receivers to breathe a little bit. And they're all physically very, very talented. Dalton Kincaid is a 99 percentile athletic tight end. Keon Coleman's the same thing. So with Amari Cooper there, it's going to do a lot for this team. Not to mention, James Cook, getting back healthy, and they've got a good, talented Ray Davis back there. They're starting to put things together, and Buffalo's 5-2. They're also running away with the AFC East sooner rather than later because Miami is struggling on top of the Jets' woes and all of that.
Dan, you nailed it. I don't have much to add for Buffalo. If you didn't watch the game, just look at the box score. Look at what Keon Coleman and Shakir did because of Amari Cooper's presence. And also, the Amari Cooper touchdown, that video going viral was so funny. He had no idea what to do in that play. Keon Coleman literally just said, he just went do this. And he did that, and Josh found him. I'm so happy for Josh Allen. So happy for Buffalo. I think Amari Cooper makes them a legit contender. I know they lost to the Texans and to the Ravens, two teams they're going to have to go through. Those are bad losses. But this is now officially a different Bills team. Arrow pointed way up.
Yeah.
Can I just say this about the Titans? Did Will Levis get benched, or was he still injured?
He was still injured, so they had made the
Okay.
decision ahead of time, like,
Because you
you're
just have to
not
play
fully
Levis.
ready.
You have to play
Yeah.
Levis. And I'm about to say this again for another team. Your other guy, you're not learning anything. And you're not in win now mode. Now you've lost so many games, you're not winning anything. So play the guy, even if the guy sucks, then just play it because Will Levis is at least entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I do agree that they're gonna have to go with him the rest of the year. They're 1-5, and at best, they'll just also be in contention for that number 1 overall pick next year.
And can I quickly say, for a guy like Will Levis, what do we've seen the recent trend of like Sam Darnold now is good, Baker Mayfield's now is good. You know what I mean? They get dumped and now they're good.
Sure.
If you want to make sure that doesn't happen to you and like now he got away from our organization, he's good, you have to keep playing him. You have to make sure he's not good. And because what if he develops and what if he becomes good? So you've just got to play him. They got to play him.
No doubt. The Bengals get a win over the Browns. It wasn't terribly impressive from the Bengals in this one. 21-14, had to scratch and claw a little bit for this win. But, obviously the big news out of this game is Deshaun, with the Achilles tendon rupture and out for the season here. But, the Browns continued to look really bad. The Bengals offense did sputter a bit. I mean, I was expecting them to put up more points. I know the Browns defense is decent, but they're not as good as they have been the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So I was expecting more out of Cincinnati, but they did what they had to get the win. Slow start, but they also never trailed in this game, and so got to give them credit for that as much.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time Joe Burrow has beaten the Browns. And so that's why I thought this was actually
Is that really?
The Browns have owned Joe Burrow, and that's why I thought this was a very impressive win from Cincinnati. You were against a division rival. You were in their building, and you are in must-win mode in Week 7, and you get a win.
He's 2-5 against the Browns.
So now he's 2-5.
Won once before.
So yeah, but again, so they've owned him. They've owned him, and they went in there and got a win. So credit. I think it's divisional wins are hard to come by. So I would disagree in your it's not an ugly win. I thought it was a great win for them. I thought it was a really great win.
It was a good win, but yeah,
you want them to play better, right? You want them to dominate because
I just don't think the Browns are very good. I think they're a pretty bad team overall. I mean, I know Nick Chubb came back in this game. It was nice to see him get a touchdown, and I think brighter days overall are on the horizon here for Cleveland, which is good. Chubb is back.
We're going to learn everything we need to officially learn about the Bengals Week 8. They play the Eagles. It's a huge win for game for both teams. Both those teams have only beaten kind of crap teams and need the win, right? So that's going to be. We're going to learn everything we need to then. But
all the Bengals wins, to their credit, on the road this year.
Yeah, they got to find a way to win at home. I will say this: they have no run game, and that's not good. They've got to find a way to run the football at least a little bit. Josh Allen will tell you how important that is.
Yeah, Allen, by the way, had 3 carries for a yard in that game. So is that any coincidence he gets Amari Cooper and able to actually just pass the ball like a quarterback?
He still hasn't thrown an interception yet. Have you realized that? Josh Allen's
it's
12 touchdowns, no interceptions. It's great.
Yeah, hyper efficient. MVP front runner, along with, of course, Lamar still looking to do that repeat, and we'll see if Jaden Daniels can get back on the field. Another candidate for win of the week for me was the Green Bay Packers. Just an absolute great win over the Houston Texans. They're 24-22. I know we touched on it. CJ Stroud, Mark, 86 yards passing in this game, I believe it was. Brutal. I mean, man, the Packers
ran the
defense
ball.
had a great game plan, and they did. Yeah. Joe Mixon had a huge game in this.
Yeah.
But you still needed more production. I mean, Tank Dell,
absolutely
0 catches when you have no Nico Collins, and if you're only gonna go to Stephon Diggs and Dalton Schultz for the whole game. Stephon Diggs had 5 catches, but everybody else with just 1. Joe Mixon had 2. You're not gonna win football games.
It felt like the game plan was we're gonna run the ball, and then it's like at some point in time, even though it was effective, you have to say to yourself, is this really helping us win the game? Now, the Texans were up in this game. They kind of let it slip. I'll say this. The thing I'm going to be critical of CJ Stroud is you're the quarterback of that offense. And if the game plan is to run the ball and you were running the ball well, you still got to score more than 3 points in the second half
Yeah.
on the road. So that
Absolutely.
they
Gotta
only
take
scored
over.
only scoring 3 points. I don't care if you're committed to running the ball or whatever it is, but like you've got to get the ball at the end zone or convert more of those drives into field goals and at least get field goals. Um, teams don't lose if on every drive they get points, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal. It doesn't happen. So you gotta convert those into points. I'll say this about the Packers. I touched on a little bit earlier. Jordan Love is officially like really scaring me because him and Matt LaFleur seem to be so simpatico, where LaFleur is now embracing Jordan Love's mistakes. No one pushes the ball more than Jordan Love. He's tied for second in touchdowns, 15 passes. He missed 2 games. He's got the second most touchdown passes, and he's tied for the league in interceptions as well. And he's missed 2 games. So what do we know from Jordan Love so far early after signing the big contract and early in the season? He is high risk, high reward. And like I said earlier, this offense is loaded with a bunch of dudes where you're like, I think I've heard of Christian Washington. I think I've heard of Wicks. I think I've heard of Dobbs. And when you actually watch them play, it's a team offense. It's a fluid team
I was going to say that exact same thing. I've never seen a receiving core quite like what they put together here, where they're all like B to they're like C plus to B
but
players.
All different.
And all different of them have, they all have different skills.
Yes.
And any one of them will have a big day that day. I mean, I think Jayden Reed is probably the cleared like number 1 overall, like the most talented.
Wicks,
but then
Dobbs,
Wicks, Watson, Tucker Kraft, like all of these guys, like they are they could all have a big game, and you have no idea who's going to eat that week.
Dude, it's crazy. And I'll say this, that to me is a really, really unique thing. And
it is.
Defensively, it's not that they got better players. They're just schemed way better. They brought in that coach from Boston College. I think he's their new defensive coordinator. They fired what's his name after the Packers, rightfully so, were calling for him to be fired last year. Now they're aggressive on defense. This Packers team, in my opinion, right now, is the 3rd best team in the NFC. I think they are a slight tick behind Detroit and Minnesota. I say that because I saw Minnesota beat Green Bay. So we'll let them keep playing more games, and that hierarchy might move. I think that right now they're 3rd slightly, mainly just because of the Minnesota win. It would not shock me at all if by the end of the year we're talking about the Green Bay Packers as having won the NFC North, and that is frustrating as all hell for me, but it's just the truth. He throws, and the picks are ugly picks, Dan. They're like Brett Favre picks. They're like, what the bleep was that?
I know,
Behind guys, into tight windows, overthrows. And then it's like, and then he does Aaron Rodgers stuff where it's like weird arm angles and floating backwards, and it's dimes. It's frustrating.
It is. It's a live by the sword, die by the sword type of approach, but they're winning more than they're losing. They're 5-2, and there you go. The Colts win 16-10 over the Dolphins. Dolphins look terrible. I do start getting the sense that maybe Mike Daniels a little bit overrated. Because for someone who's been pegged as like the system guy and he's gotten to this amazing offense and he does a great job, he doesn't win games without Tua, and Tua's not an all-pro, even, barely Pro Bowl level quarterback. It's just they're not looking good, and like to not dial up any plays. I mean, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle got a combined like 4 touches this game. I mean, that's inexcusable in a game where you're losing. You're playing a beatable Colts defense. That was frustrating. I mean, those are when you lean on your stars, and they haven't been doing that. Now it looks like Tua is going to be probably back this week, which that's a whole other discussion. But Colts, like, good for them. Like, Anthony Richardson leads them down the field, like gets the drive, the game-winning drive that you need. But the Dolphins at 2-4, like, their season might already be getting close to life support when they're getting Tua back, and they're going to need a quick turnaround here from him.
I think they'll get a quick turnaround. I think when Tua comes back, it's not like he's dealing with a torn something and now it's like, is he healthy? He'll pass concussion protocol. He probably could have played 3 weeks ago. I think that this was just again a we need to show that we're taking this seriously. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't think he'll miss a beat with his guys. Dan, Jalen Waddle had 1 catch for 11 yards on 2 targets.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill had 1 catch for 8 yards and 2 targets. Jonnu Smith, the tight end, had 7 catches, 7 targets, 96 yards. So he's dealing. I'll say this. You wanted me to be critical about Mike McDaniel. I'm not going to be, because I think that Mike McDaniel is a good coach. I think the problem is they're so fragile with Tua's ego, and they had to pay him so much money. They went extremely cheap with the backup quarterback position. Neither of those guys can.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, you don't give an end around to Tyreek Hill to try and get you got to get the ball in their hands.
I would agree. It was, in that way difficult, right? But I just think that they need, as a Dolphin, as an organization, have the coming to Jesus. I don't care if it messes with Tua's mentals. We need to have someone now in the building who can legitimately compete with Tua, and be able to do what Tua does, if not better, when he's down, because he's going to go down. I'll say this about the Colts, Anthony Richardson. So through 7 games now, obviously he's missed time. The most important thing for Anthony Richardson is to just keep playing football. He has played such little football. And you saw it there at the end. Like, his best football was towards the end of that game, like getting his team in this position to do, and that drive to kick the field goal. It's like, just keep playing football. Stay healthy enough to where you just can keep getting snaps. Your mind can digest it. You can grow. It'll help him. He's never going to be a 70% completion guy, but he can be like Cam Newton and get to like 60 if you keep just having that experience of knowing where your guys are and actually playing football. And they need Jonathan Taylor back. They're a better offense with Jonathan Taylor, and they haven't had.
Yeah, agree. Well, Saquon Barkley has almost a career day on the ground against his former team. And I don't remember who, I think it might have been Nick Wright who said that, for how perplexing, actually it wasn't Nick Wright. It was, who's the co-host on The Volume with Colin Cowherd that he brings on all the time.
Middlecoff?
John Middlecoff. He was saying that, for as bizarre as it was for on Hard Knocks, the ownership of the New York Giants to sign off on a lot of these like sound bites, and especially after the fact, like after knowing that Saquon went to Philly, and then still for, Tom Mara to be saying the quote, "I'll be really sick if he goes to Philly." He Middlecoff's theory was, I think he put that out there to set it up for when this goes so terribly wrong. You will see that I was really against Saquon Barkley leaving. I didn't want him to go to Philly,
I'm going to fire my GM.
And look how bad the GM screwed this whole situation up. And now Joe Schoen very well may be on the hot seat by the end of this year. He might be gone. Not only because of that, but this is very reminiscent of when the Titans traded away AJ Brown.
Yeah.
For seemingly just because, we can't afford them. It's like, nope, you got to pay for some of these guys. And Saquon, of course, has 176 yards and a touchdown day against his former team as the Eagles win 28-3.
Yeah.
Big day, big win for the Eagles too. I mean, like, look, it's the Giants, but the Eagles needed to win that game to keep pace in the NFC East and keep things afloat after a couple bad PR weeks, from Nick Sirianni and company.
We were going to lead the show with a Drew Lock sighting, but we decided against it. I will say this. I agree with your Giants assessment and Middlecoff's. I think it's very plausible. Mara, they're a very proud family, and they're like the McCaskies. They're like your family, the Rooney family, where their life and their legacy is these charter franchises, these big time franchises in big time markets. They'll never sell. It's their everything. They're proud people. And I think if John Mara really wanted him, he would have signed him though. Still, like it's like you're still the owner.
I
you
mean,
still
that's true.
make the
You put
decision.
your foot down. Yeah.
But I think he might have just be covering his ass and saying, listen, I'm going to trust my GM, but if this backfires, yeah, makes sense. I'll say
You
this.
gotta
I
own
still
it.
think Brian Daboll is the coach, should be the coach. Also, the Giants are not good enough to be beat up and still be competitive. When the Giants are healthy, they can be feisty and competitive. When they're beat up and they're missing an offensive line, they're not good. And they were in this game for the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, I'm going to reserve judgment next week when they play the Bengals, just like I'm reserving the Bengals judgment next week when they play the Phillies, when they play the Eagles. But I'll say this. They absolutely needed a get-right game, and they got it. 8 sacks for their defense. The defense showed up. Remember, this Eagles team, when they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, led the league in sacks by like a large margin. So they needed that. They needed the get-right game. They needed the offense to just be like, see, we can score. And so I don't know if that means they're going to beat the Bengals, but I certainly feel better about it if you're an Eagles fan today than you did before the game started.
Yep. I honestly don't have much of a take on the Rams Raiders game. This was the one game where I failed to see really any highlights from this game, and I didn't get to watch the recap. So I don't know entirely all that went down. I do know that Aiden O'Connell has now been placed on IR, and the team has signed Desmond Ritter. Yeah. So there you go with that. But yeah, I mean, the Rams, it's a 5-point win against the Raiders. Not super inspiring, but you know, they did so, of course, as they have all season long without Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, their top two offensive players. With Cooper Kupp should be back this week.
Thursday night. I can't wait for Thursday night.
Oh, that's right.
Football.
Yes. Yeah.
Rams against the Vikings, Thursday night football. That's going to be really fascinating. I'll say this. I agree with you. It's a weird, like the Raiders are now in like laughable mode. I was wrong in the Raiders. I thought that Antonio Pierce would run a really tight ship. I thought that Minshew would carry over more momentum from last year and really kind of establish like, hey, I can be a borderline starting quarterback. You know what I mean? Win 7-8 games. It hasn't worked out. Luke Getsy, I will just say, everyone thought it was a great start. Now look at what you got with Luke Getsy. Offensively, it's ugly. They're devoid of talent. The Raiders, like the Patriots, like I said, they just need like 7 more B guys and like 2 more A guys. I know they just traded an A guy away. That was still the right move to trade Devontae Adams away.
Well, now there's rumors that Max Crosby might be on the trade.
I would keep Max Crosby if I was them. I would keep
here.
Max Crosby. Yeah. Same thing you just said about finding ways to keep Saquon Barkley. You keep Max Crosby. Good. It's a great win for the Rams because they're still alive, right? Like you are a 2-4 in that division, alive, and you can sit there, unlike the other teams, and know that your best players are back within the next 10, 15 days. Cooper Kupp this week. Nacua is off the IR. He's in the open window to return now, the 21-day window. So it's good news for the Rams.
Yeah, getting healthy at the right time, that's always good. In a relatively wide open division there, again, in the NFC West. Jaden Daniels suffers a rib injury, kind of a bummer, but he'll probably be back, if not this upcoming week, the week after. It didn't really matter. The Commanders win 40-7 convincingly over the Panthers. Yeah. Marcus Mariota comes into relief and plays it really well. 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and had a couple scrambles in there as well. But overall, the Commanders are so much more of a complete team than I think any of us thought. I thought that they were going to be solid. I was big on, the hiring of Dan Quinn. I thought it was going to be good for this culture. I still didn't remotely see a 5-2 start or a dominating effort from the quarterback and the rest of the team like we have seen. So I thought it was a pretty impressive outing from the Commanders, especially to do it all with their backups. On the flip side, I just don't know what the Panthers are doing at this point. I mean, they threw Bryce Young in there for to throw 2 passes at the end of the game. And it's like, is this where we're at really with this organization? Is now Andy Dalton is struggling. He throws 2 picks and we're still going to just have Bryce Young be the end of game when it's all already over. We'll put you in there for a few reps. It just feels weird in Carolina right now. I'm not sure what to make of it. And there's nothing on the horizon that looks like there's much hope to come here.
They don't even have the number 1 pick if the season ended right now. That belongs to the Patriots. It's brutal. I'll say this. You have to start Bryce Young. Like, just start Bryce Young.
Yeah, just
the only
do
reason you would be playing Andy Dalton is if that bump continued and you were like 3-4 now, you know what I mean? Or like even 2-5, but competitive.
Competitive? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and you're just like, listen, we as morale as an organization need to show that we're a good football team. We just need a better quarterback. Now it's just like, it's all shit. And it's so bad. You wonder, if this team's going to win a football game again. It doesn't feel like they're capable of doing that.
No, they're very bad.
For the Commanders, great win. It's fun to play the Panthers and beat them up. I'll say this about Jayden Daniels. We knew this is a concern, right? Like, he got injured on the long run. He didn't get down, didn't get himself out of bounds. He is a slight guy. And what's interesting about Jayden Daniels with his own health going forward is, too, he's a tall guy. So he's not like Kyler Murray where it's short and stocky. Jayden is long, and he's kind of awkward in that way because he's so long. And when the way he got tackled and crunched on himself, it's because he's so like tall and awkward and long, right? Like, if that was Kyler Murray getting tackled there, he's like a little bowling ball and would have hit the ground hard. He has to play. He has to play this weekend. They flexed the game. Bears.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And you realize my Bears are in such a shitty spot because if they beat the Commanders without Jayden Daniels, I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter.
It'll be a fluke.
You beat another shitty team. They didn't have their quarterback. And if Jayden Daniels wins and beats Caleb, it'll be like, oh, you picked the wrong quarterback. You stink. Caleb could throw 4 touchdowns and 400 yards, but if they lose, it'll be, oh, you stink. Blah blah blah. So the Bears are in a lose-lose unless Jayden plays and they win. Then it's a win-win-win-win-win. But
some big wins, yeah.
Yeah, I hope he's healthy. I hope he plays this week.
Russell Wilson makes the Steelers debut after Mike Tomlin, bucked what most of the people, the reports are within the organization wanted Justin Fields to stay the starter. Obviously the discourse in the public eye was along those lines as well. But
wanted him to stay a starter.
I gotta say, for at least 1 week, Mike Tomlin was proven right.
Right.
Russell Wilson looked pretty good. 37-15 win over the Jets. I was super worried about this game, Mark, coming in. Not only did they get Devontae Adams, I'm like, great. Now, now they fortified their offense even more, and coming off of a bad loss, they're going to be motivated. It's Sunday night. We're starting Russ. Like, what's the rust going to look like? And it definitely looked bad the first quarter. Russ had back-to-back throws in the dirt that were like probably his 2 worst throws of his career. But I loved how like the Steelers just turned it on and kind of never let their foot off the gas at that point. And so that was inspiring. Very encouraged by just how they're getting the team involved in the passing game. This was the reason that Russell Wilson was put out there. It not only because Mike Tomlin brought him in to be the starter and that it was his job, but also, from what he said with Chris Collinsworth and what they were always talking about with the pregame meetings was that, Tomlin said, I made this decision because I'm not trying to see who's the best guy to win this game. I'm trying to see who's the best guy for us to win a championship this year, if we can do that. And so I commend him for making the move because he just wants to see what they've got. And I think there is something to be said for, you brought 2 quarterbacks in, you had a whole new quarterback room this year. There's something to be said for laying all your chips on the table and seeing what works and doing that now versus doing it in that 8-game slog that we've been talking about for so long. I was lukewarm. I was kind of 50-50 on this decision because I was liking what I was seeing from Fields for the most part, but there was a lot left to be desired in the passing game. It's kind of pick your poison because what Fields gave you was a lot of running ability behind a shaky O-line that's had a lot of injuries. And great red zone running ability. And what Russ gives you is the passing game, but not much in the run. Like they are both totally different in terms of what they give you and what their weaknesses are. But I think what's more sustainable long-term, if Russ can kind of continue this trajectory, unfortunately is Russell Wilson, I think, because you're going to have to win games in this league throwing the ball. And it just wasn't getting done with Justin Fields at that level. I love how Justin Fields has handled this.
He's
total
he's
consummate
amazing.
pro.
He's amazing.
Incredible. And I hope that this sets him up to be the franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers down the road. But I do think in the interim, like for this year, for the way that this team wants to run the football, I actually think it does set up better for Russell Wilson because I think they just trust him more right now. And it was clear by the plays that they called that Russ has more leeway. They're opening things up more for Russ to make decisions passing the football. And what was more telling was Russ had, I think it was 44 plays under center in this game. Justin Fields had 41 the first 5 weeks. So they're just playing a different brand of football with Russell Wilson out there. For right or wrong, I think they should have given Justin Fields more latitude. But it's clear that the way they want to play football is the way that they played this past week. And I was very pleasantly surprised. I thought the Jets were going to win this game. And just a quick note on the Jets, and I'll toss it over to you. They're in disarray. Davante Adams is not going to be your savior. They're just not a good football team. They're that team that has a lot of dudes, but they don't play as a unit at all. They've got a lot of flashy names.
They're the Brooklyn Nets.
Nothing is being cohesive right now, and it's bad.
They're the Kevin Durant Brooklyn Nets with Kyrie Irving and James Harden.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Remember Kyrie
or Russell Westbrook? I mean, like,
remember Kyrie Irving said before that season started, when it was Kyrie, Harden, Durant, we're all in Brooklyn. He said when they had Steve Nash as the coach, we don't really need a coach. Each one of us could take a turn as being coach.
Exactly.
Who does that sound like? It sounds like a guy who's playing quarterback for the New York Jets. Yep. The Jets scored 17 points. They were up at halftime. They were up at halftime.
Or 15. Yeah.
They were up at 15 points. They were up at halftime, 15-14, and they didn't score any more points. Davante Adams had 9 targets for 3 catches. It felt like Aaron Rodgers threw 2 horrendous picks. The first one.
Well, the second one was on Wilson. Like it bounced off of his chest.
Yes. But I add that into horrendous because of the time and the place. Like it's still a turnover, and you rifle a ball in there, and it's just it was killer as far as what it led to for the Jets.
Yeah, they were both, but
that first one was 100% on Rodgers. Like it's like he still thinks he's 31 and like I can make magic happen. Newsflash, Aaron, like you lose some zip. You lose some miles per hour. And I think what's really coming to fruition with Aaron is that Aaron is now the definition of the guy who is just the talent, not the worker, right? Like Tom Brady sustained because he was the worker over the talent.
Yeah, he was in the foxhole.
Peyton Manning, it was so tragic about Peyton Manning's final season is his body failed him because he mentally was still the best mind the game has ever seen, but his body failed him. Aaron's mind has never been what made him great. And his mind, you might argue, the snap count thing. That's not Aaron being smart. That's not Aaron reading the defense. That's Aaron having a great voice and being a talented guy. Like he's just talented. And so when your talent drops even from 100% to 90%, you throw interceptions like you do that first interception, and you don't score more than 15 points when you fired your coach. You got all the guys you wanted. Listen, you're just a bad football team. They're not cohesive. Yeah. There's no passion. Rex Ryan's big speech on Get Up was amazing.
It was great, dude.
I think they should hire Rex Ryan. It would be amazing. Just like, listen, and the Jets have 2 really great running backs, and they ran the ball 15 times for 54 yards.
Yeah.
So
no, they couldn't run the football.
You reap what you sow there. I will say about the Steelers, what was so impressive about you said they didn't let the foot off the gas. They were down at half. 4 drives in the second half, 4 scores. I mean, that's what did I just say with the Texans? If you score, you're going to win the game. You had 4 drives in the second half. You scored on all 4 drives, and they won the game. And it looked like a blowout, but it's not like they did anything special. It's just like, no, when we got the ball, we scored. Whether it's a field goal, a touchdown, whatever it is, you scored. I am 100% agree with you. I still think at some point in time, there's a high likely chance that we'll see Justin Fields starting a football game for the Steelers this year. I had no idea what to expect. It's one of the few games this NFL season that's a primetime game. It's the only primetime game this season I didn't bet because I was just like, I have no idea. I have no idea what to do. And I was very, very giggly in the first quarter, like Russ stinks. This is amazing. And then the second half, I was like, oh no, this is a great performance by Russ. Now the question is it sustainable? It's his job now. I think he could easily lose this job still.
Yeah. No, I do agree with that. He could
and
lose the job,
Najee
but
looked great.
37 points.
Great.
Yeah, 30 plus points back-to-back weeks for the Steelers. 37 is the most they've scored in a win since week 3 of 2020. So, yeah, that just goes to show you how unusual this was in terms of a output of offensive production for this team. And a lot of the Pittsburgh media is talking about how they may feel the best about the Steelers right now that they have since maybe all the way back to 2018.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but from what I can tell, you're fairly healthy.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, our outside linebackers are, we've got two injuries on that front. Offensive line, this was our 7th offensive line combination. Our offensive line is completely decimated. They're on their 4th string center.
I guess I should say that your stars like TJ Watt, Pickett, Freiermuth, none of those guys.
All of those have been healthy. Najee.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks, obviously. Secondary has been healthy for the most part. Linebackers. So yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of health, but their offensive line's been if they could get health back along that front, I would feel a lot better. But all right. Yeah, I'll take it right now. I mean, they're 5-2. And that's why I think we both put them in our top 10 rankings.
We did
because of it. It's their first inclusion on the list, and I think they deserve it. I mean, they're a pretty well-rounded club. The Ravens, another very well-rounded club, beat the Buccaneers. This is a good win for the Ravens, despite what maybe a lot of people were talking about how they should have won this game. I mean, yes, they should have because they're a better football team. The Buccaneers are no slouch. Unfortunately for the Bucs, they lose Mike Evans to a hamstring injury, which it has now been reported he will not return before week 11. So,
he's going
to be a few weeks here
and everything.
Yeah. Chris Godwin lost for the season, unfortunately, with an ankle injury for him. So a really rough day for the Buccaneers and their receiving core here. But Baker Mayfield did battle and got them, to within a little bit of a chance there in the fourth quarter.
The Bucs are feisty
team. The Buccaneers are good. I actually, them or the Falcons, I would feel much better about them than the Falcons if it weren't for these injuries. Now that might be a little dicey because the next few weeks you really got to survive if you're the Bucs. But Ravens looked really good, man. I mean, Lamar Jackson is so good. Derrick Henry is so good. This team is incredible. 500 yards of offense. I don't know what more you could say.
No,
they're a very, very, very good football team.
There's nothing more to say. They've won 5 in a row after the 0-2 start, and they are they and the Lions are the 2 best offenses in football. It still worries me, the Ravens defense, because I'm still just used to being like, oh, they're the Ravens. They have a good defense. Their defense is not special. It's not special. And that is a concern. They still have time to figure it out. And situationally, they can still be good, which is really in this modern NFL what you need, right? You need a situationally good defense on third down, get you off the field. Lamar Jackson.
They're like the Chiefs of the first 2 years of Patrick Mahomes. Where they were just lighting up the score. They could go toe-to-toe with teams, but it's going to be a 50-45, shootout.
Andrews, likely, Bateman, obviously, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, Justice Hill. They have a ton of dudes, just like the Lions. You just can list off the dudes. And then at the centerpiece of it all is, I mean, what more can you say? I still think if you told me today, for the next 4 years, who do you want as quarterback of your franchise? Lamar would probably be 4th on my list behind Mahomes, Burrow, and Allen Burrow.
I think I would take Lamar over Burrow, to be honest.
But I think it's really close. It's really hard to argue. And I think the only reason I hesitate slightly is still, I just think he's in the best situation. He's got a coach and an organization that have just completely given in to him. He's the leader of. And I think in order for Lamar to be as great as he has been, he needs that all-in support, and it takes a special organization. The Ravens are a special organization. They've been one of the best-run organizations in football over the last 20-plus years. The Ravens are an absolute wagon. Right now, They are the number one threat to the Chiefs. They almost beat the Chiefs on opening night. I still think the Tampa Bay Bucks are a solid football team. They're just in that third tier, right? Tier 1 is like the Chiefs. Tier 2, it's like, Ravens, Lions, Bills, Vikings. Tier 3 is like Packers, Texans, and I think the Bucks are floating right near tier 3. The injuries probably knocked them down now, but we'll see how they survive it. Hell of a win for Lamar. 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the year, 5th in passing yards in the NFL right now.
Is he your MVP right now? For the third, that would be 3 in a row,
Dan,
right?
He's the best football player right now.
I think so.
He's the best player
in
football right now.
I agree with you.
It's hard that it's a regular season award because, again, Lamar now is only judged on what happens in the playoffs. And he has to make more moments. Listen, for Lamar, if you keep just losing in AFC championship games, eventually, if you're the only person you're losing to is Mahomes, then I will never hold it against him. I'll never hold it against him. I'll consider him one of the all-time greats. But if he can't get to that point and if he loses to an Allen, or if he loses to a Stroud, or if he loses to, you know what I mean, a Burrow, and one and done, then you're going to have to use that as evidence is the building the whole picture of Lamar. But as far as a regular season quarterback goes and just a football player, he is the best football player on the planet right now. I think there's better quarterbacks, barely. He's the best football player on the planet.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, his skill set, no question.
Since he signed the contract, and what did I say when he signed the contract? The start of last year, before we started, I said I was all in on Lamar because I think Lamar was just that guy. The only reason he had a bad year the year before is he wanted the money. He's got the money, and he has fucking committed 120%. And he's been an MVP and the MVP so far the year so far. He's been the MVP of football since he signed the contract.
100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree. He's
look at all the other guys who signed contracts, Dan, who were like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. We'll talk about him in a second. Like, I don't know. Like, are they good? I don't know. Tua, Dak. Like, are they good? I don't know. Goff, Tyler J. Hell of a comment. Goff is a sneaky MVP candidate. Very sneaky.
He is.
I think he's still like plus 800 for the MVP.
Oh, that'd be a nice bet there.
Yeah. Sneaky MVP candidate.
Yeah, I love it. All right, final game. Cardinals edge and survive the LA Chargers 17-15, the final here. Big takeaway for me, Mark, was that the Chargers just didn't ever finish a drive.
No.
They ended up this game with 5 field goals. And especially in the second half, every single drive was productive until they started to get towards the red zone. And then it was, it was a punt to start, and then it was 3 straight field goals at the end of the game for them. And then the Cardinals went on a walk-off field goal, or not, maybe it wasn't walk-off, but,
basically
field goal at the end of the game. So, it was weird. It was weird, but I did think it was a bad loss for the Chargers. They were a candidate for me for worst loss of the week.
I would agree because there's more expectations than the Chargers and the Cardinals. But I'll say this about the Cardinals, Dan. They are officially the Any Given Sunday team.
Yeah,
they will lose by 40 points. They'll win a squeaker. Then they'll upset someone they're not supposed to. Then they'll lose by 30 points. They are the Any Given Sunday team.
It's because of Kyler. Yeah.
If they can find some more consistency, the Cardinals could absolutely be a frustrating out for a lot of teams. But you just never know what you're going to get week in, week out. For the Chargers, extremely disappointed. Listen, the wild card in the AFC it's a mess. It's up for grabs. But this is a loss they're going to look back and be really frustrated about. I mean, J.K. Dobbins couldn't do anything explosive. Justin Herbert did his best, but he's got no guy. He's got no guy to just be like, that's my guy. I need a guy. The Lions have all the guys. The Ravens have all the guys. He's got no guy. He's a zero guy. For Justin Herbert. And it's just, it was ugly. Good win for the Cardinals, though. They're again alive in this division.
Absolutely. Yep. No question about it. Oh, well, that wraps it up for us. I know the Cowboys and Bears were on a bye this week. Next week, no buys. It's a bye-less week 8 in the NFL, which is interesting. And then we got a couple after that for week 9. But
yeah, the Jags come back from London and the Patriots come back from London and no bye. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for them. They could certainly use it. Yeah, I would think just the jet lag alone would be pretty rough. I don't know if they did, but if I were the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would have, gotten the first flight home after that game.
Yeah. Same.
Try and get there ASAP and start, late practice on Monday or something like that, or even just start Tuesday. But yeah, kind of a brutal scheduling snafu there for those teams. But
check out the for frequency's sake power rankings. They'll come out tomorrow. They like to drop them. They'll put it on all the socials, and you'll see Dan and I's individual rankings plus like the overall rankings. You and I are pretty lockstep.
I know our last 5, I think, are identical, and then we have the same teams in the first 5, but they're jumbled.
Different order. I'll say this: some of the dudes on this network, I don't know what
questions.
Are we watching? Are we watching the same football? I don't know what we're doing out here.
We're gonna have to get like a roundtable discussion here. Get the 8-box over here and have people, plead their case.
I was looking through the Google Doc, and I'm like, I felt like Vince Lombardi. What the hell is going on out here?
That's great. All right. Well, he is Mark. I'm Dan. We are the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. Check us out at FB Lounge Pod, wherever you get your social media. We've got the podcast available for you on all of your available platforms and YouTube. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Appreciate the support. And we'll see you back here next week.
This has been a For Frequency's Sake Podcast Network production. For more great content, subscribe to For Frequency's Sake on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.